Okay, so it appears that there is an article out in the news coming out of NBC News. It breaks down basically what's going on in the Biden White House, which is complete chaos. Biden is growing increasingly frustrated because of all of the different crises that are coming into the administration and being faced by the administration. You can see what happened in Uvalde. You can just see that. And it just seems to keep coming. There was the baby formula shortage, which was a horrible, horrific look for the Biden administration. And in the article, it's going to explain that essentially that's one of the things where he was really angry at his staff for only having told him recently when it was a problem long in the making. And so there have been just so many crises going on. And it appears to say that basically in this article, there's an inevitable staff shakeup in the Biden White House. It's also going to talk about how, the Biden staffers keep coming out after he makes one of those comments where he goes off script and he says something like, "We can't allow Putin to remain in power," right? That's a very bold statement. And then later on, his staffers come out and say, "Oh, he didn't really mean that." He's actually pissed about that. And my analysis that I gave is what Joe Biden seems to think too, which is pretty crazy that I was able to think that way. But, like I had basically said that the different gaffes that he had done, whether it be calling the Proud Boys the poor boys, or saying that Putin shouldn't be in power anymore, these kinds of things, it ended up actually helping him because it matched him with Trump's energy, and people really wanted that authenticity. And so he seems to share the same opinion. So that's pretty interesting. Anyways, it says, inside a Biden White House adrift. Amid a rolling series of calamities and sinking approval ratings, the president's feeling lately is that he just can't catch a break. And that angst is rippling through his party. So it's not just the president, it's also the rest of the Democratic Party as well. So it says, faced with the worsening political predicament, President Joe Biden is pressing aides for a more compelling message and a sharper strategy, while bristling at how they've tried to stifle the plain-speaking persona that has long been one of his most potent assets. Biden is rattled by sinking approval ratings and is looking to regain voters' confidence that he can provide the sure-handed leadership he promised during the campaign, people close to the president say. Crises have piled up in ways that have at times made the Biden White House look flat-footed: record inflation, high gas prices, a rise in COVID case numbers, and now what happened in Uvalde, that is another issue with gun violence. Democratic leaders are at a loss about how he can revive his prospects by November, when midterm elections may cost his party control of Congress. It's definitely going to cost him control of Congress. They're going to get wiped. I don't know what's required here, says Representative Jim Clyburn, Democrat, Southern Carolina, whose endorsement in 2020 Democratic primaries helped rescue Biden's struggling candidacy. But I do know the poll numbers have been stuck where they have been, where they are for far too long. So remember that Jim Clyburn is the one who really saved Joe Biden's presidency in South Carolina. I do believe that if Jim Clyburn didn't come out and endorse him, I think that Tom Steyer would have ate up a lot of Joe Biden's African-American vote. And if Tom Steyer had done what the poll said and had gotten like 40% of the African-American vote, in South Carolina and the other states, Bernie Sanders probably would have ended up winning, because we needed someone to break up that, monolithity. I don't know what the right word for that would be, the right type of word for that. But, they voted extremely monolithically, typically as African-American voter bloc does. And splitting that would have really been the only way for Bernie Sanders to win. So he can't save the day right now. It's out of his control at this point. There's a West Wing shakeup. Speculation is churning that Biden could shake up the West Wing staff, although that's not about to happen right away. Multiple people close to the White House said they've heard that Chief of Staff Ron Klain will depart at some point after the midterms, and one has heard him discuss leaving. Should Klain go, a potential successor is Anita Dunn, a White House advisor and Biden confidant whom he often turns to when his fortunes look bleak. Dunn began working at the White House at the start of the term, then left and returned in early May at Biden's specific request. No woman or person of color has ever been the White House Chief of Staff since the position was created after World War II. I think Anita Dunn was also the one who saved Biden's White House campaign as well. So I think she had stepped in when they were really floundering. So I'm not 100% sure on that, but I definitely recognize the name and feel like I remember that. It says it has other possible replacements, include Steve Ricchetti, longtime Biden aide who was counselor to the president. Susan Rice, you guys remember Susan Rice was involved in the big unmasking scandal or whatever. The domestic policy chief, after he lost the Virginia's governor race last year, Terry McAuliffe, spoke to the White House about taking a senior role as an advisor to the president, cabinet secretary, chief of staff. And so It says this article is based on interviews with more than 24 current and former administration officials, lawmakers, congressional aides, and other Democrats close to the White House who spoke on the condition of anonymity to freely discuss the president's private conversations. Any assessment of Biden's performance needs to take into account the epic challenges he faced from the start. So they're trying to say that he came in with the most daunting set of challenges since FDR, arguably. He says, it says, Biden wonders the same thing. I've heard him say recently that he used to say about President Obama's tenure that everything landed on his desk but locusts, and now he understands how that feels, a White House official said. So that's pretty interesting. It also says managerial breakdowns. It says amid a rolling series of calamities, Biden's feeling lately is that he just can't catch a break. Biden is frustrated if it's not one thing, it's another, said a person close to the president. An assumption baked into Biden's candidacy was that he would preside over a smoothly running administration by dint of his decades of experience in public office. Yet there are signs of managerial breakdowns that have angered both him and his party. I don't really think Joe Biden really has that many qualified people managing his situation, like the administration, his staff, etc. And I don't know how much of in 2016, it was actually reported that pretty much damn near his entire staff had ran to Hillary Clinton's campaign. So maybe those would have been better people to preside over the administration, and he doesn't have them. But he had to bring in Anita Dunn, I think, to save his candidacy period. So he probably doesn't have those people. But I think Joe Biden thought, I'm a stable guy. I'm the centrist guy. I'm going to have a very, chill, very calm term. But it just doesn't seem to be going that way, especially as there's just, constant, scandal. Not scandal, but, crisis after crises, right? It says Biden is annoyed that he wasn't alerted sooner about the baby formula shortage and that he got his first briefing in the past month, even though the crisis had been long in the making. The White House didn't specify when Biden got his first briefing on the formula shortage. His nominee to head the FDA, Dr. Robert Califf, told Congress last week that the agency was sluggish and that it had made suboptimal decisions as parents hunted for formula on empty store shelves. You also probably got to keep in mind, honestly, Trump basically gutted every single federal administration in order to give more power back to corporations from federal regulation, whether it be the FDA or these different administrations. And so he's probably on the bad end of that too, where he's like shit, I don't even have any power in these areas because all of it was pulled away by the Trump administration. So he's probably dealing with that too, which isn't going to make it easier. Here's the thing I was referencing earlier about how, he makes the gaffe and then his people come out. This is beyond policy. Biden is unhappy about a pattern that has developed in the West Wing. He makes a clear and succinct statement, only to have aides rush to explain that he actually meant something else. The so-called cleanup campaign, he has told advisors, undermines him and smothers the authenticity that fueled his rise. Worse, it feeds a Republican talking point that he's not fully in command. The issue came to a head when Biden ad-libbed during a speech in Poland that Russian President Vladimir Putin cannot remain in power. Within minutes, Biden's aides tried to walk back his comments, saying he hadn't called for Putin's removal and that U.S. policy was unchanged. Biden was furious that his remarks were being seen as unreliable, arguing that he speaks genuinely and reminding his staff that he's the one who is president. So I guess it is true that his staff really is taking a lot of the command, and that actually gives some fuel to the conspiracies or whatever that it's whoever is writing his stuff is controlling the presidency, because it's I guess that would mean if he's disagreeing with their comments about his comments, that would mean that his staff must be going rogue, maybe because they feel it's just so dire that they do. It says, asked about the staff's practice of clarifying Biden's remarks, the official said, "We don't say anything that the president doesn't want us to say," which is interesting because Joe Biden himself is saying, "Hey, my dog, that's a lie. That's a lie." That's what he's saying. But what you can see there is he definitely seems to also think that, the genuineness is really what really helped him be able to get into his office, It says the so-called cleanup campaign, he has told advisors, undermines him and smothers the authenticity that fueled his rise. I haven't heard anybody else say this. I had said this before, but I basically believe that his quote-unquote authenticity, which is really his old age preventing him from being able to have a filter. The older you get, the lesser of a filter you have. That's why if you talk to old people, they'll tell you about their entire lives and stuff you probably aren't even comfortable knowing, but they just don't care. That's generally speaking, as you get older, you lose your filter. I think that him losing his filter did end up making him seem more authentic. Even when he was yelling at the union worker or whatever, people wanted that because Trump brought that. And so they were like, man, we need to fight that crazy fake authenticity of Trump, which is just a bunch of lies, obviously, and just doing what people wanted, and to fight it with our own authenticity. So he believes also what I believe, which is something I haven't heard other people say. But anyways, and also explains that Democrats are unnerved too, the rest of the party. It says Biden's angst is rippling through the party. Democratic lawmakers are sparring amongst themselves and blaming the White House for their dim prospects in November. Representative Stephanie Murphy, Democrat Florida, said the White House has failed to put forward what she called an intellectually honest plan to combat inflation, a burden that ranks first among America's economic concerns, polling indicates. A bill the House passed to crack down on alleged gas price gouging isn't an answer, she said. If I sound frustrated, it's because I hear from my constituents. They're struggling. There's not time for political games. It's not the time for finding boogeymen. Bogeymen. That was boogeymen. But okay. A spokeswoman for her office said she hasn't talked about policy with the senior White House official in 6 months. White House official countered that Murphy has been in very regular contact with our staff here. Ooh, so we got some fights over what actually is the truth going on here. That's what we got some fights over. Does Biden's frustrations, Biden has vented to his aides about not getting credit from Americans or the news media for actions he believes have helped the country, particularly on the economy. Unemployment rates have dropped to below 4% pre-pandemic levels, but polling indicates most Americans believe the economy is in bad shape. Biden grouses that Republicans aren't getting their share of the blame for legislation gridlock in Congress, while he's repeatedly faulted for not getting his agenda passed. The president has also told his aides he doesn't think enough Democrats go on television to defend him. A particular sore spot is his slumping poll numbers. He's mystified that his approval rating has dropped to a level approaching that of his predecessor, Donald Trump, ranked by historians as one of the worst presidents in history. He's now lower than Trump, and he's really twisted about it, another person close to the White House has said. So he is very pissed. He's done just a really poor job, I would say. Your job as the president of the United States, and if you understand political science, like you've taken a comparative politics class to learn about how the different political systems work across different countries, you understand that one of the key aspects of a presidential system, which is a system in which you actually the people directly elect the president, one of the biggest differences between a parliamentary and a presidential system is people don't vote for the prime minister in a parliamentary system. They're voted for by the members of parliament. Congress doesn't vote for the President of the United States. The people do in a presidential system. But that presidential system sets up, because you have you're electing the most powerful person, it sets up like a two-party divide because people rally around, the defense rallies around Joe Biden, whoever is the president, and then the offense usually comes in one group. And so it creates like this two-party divide. You're supposed to, as President of the United States, you're really supposed to be the head honcho guy. You're supposed to be the one that gets your party in line. So I blame him because, again, you got to be like LBJ, you have to really bring people into line and say, you need to get into this. Otherwise, we're going to isolate you. Start putting leverage on people. Say, I'm going to tell Manchin, I'm going to run fundraisers against you for a primary opponent. Tell him I'm going to support a primary opponent. Tell him I'm really going to let shit out about you. You're going to get exposed. I'm going to call you out on all your bullshit. I'm going to call you out on all your, cold deals and all your business dealings. I'm going to call you out on your corruption, all of that stuff. That's what Lyndon B. Johnson did, and that's what he would do right now. And that's just FDR, same thing. If you want to be a great president, you have to be a great president. You can't just be a historic president by just being a president. That's what I don't understand. Obama was not an LBJ or an FDR. He was too weak. And honestly, Obama was weaker than Biden. I genuinely believe if Obama was in Biden's position with Afghanistan, I genuinely believe he would have pulled out. He would have bitched out. I genuinely believe that. Whereas Joe Biden, really a lot of credit to him. I'll never forget him standing up to the MIC and the entire, media manufacturing consent BS and everything that was against him and saying not only he quadrupled down. So I give him a lot of credit there, but also not only is actually doing things important for your administration, whether you like it or not, optics and how you advertise yourself is also very important. But if you're mad at the people in your party not defending you, you have to really rally the troops together. You're the one who has to really, get them together, and you're supposed to be the leader. So if they're not defending you, it's because you're not being a leader. You're not leading anything, which that's on you. Again, that's on you. You can't just be a great president just by being president. You have to do great things. You have to overcome heavy struggles. You have to be a very good tactician when it comes to being a president of the United States, to coming to whipping votes for things, right? You have to be able to make Joe Manchin your bitch. That's what you have to do. And so when people say, oh, he's got his hand tied, there's one or two Democrats that will prevent him from getting what he wants. You think that Lyndon B. Johnson, FDR didn't have to deal with those things when getting, LBJ created Medicare. Like, he created that. You think he didn't face troubles? What about, like, when he got the Civil Rights Act passed? He went through a ton of troubles, not only getting the Civil Rights Act passed, but making sure it survived the Supreme Court. He's a huge reason why that actually survived the Supreme Court and why I was able to go through. Same thing with FDR getting all the crazy stuff he got passed, like Social Security. So all these presidents have these issues and you have to overcome them. And if you can't, you're not a great president, point blank. So I blame this on him. It says, a few weeks ago, Biden started employing a midterm election tactic that has been a go-to for sitting presidents, villainize the opposition. He sought to tether Republicans to Trump's MAGA agenda. Biden has been leading on White House aides to come up with a message that captures the stark choice voters face. Biden himself brought up the phrase ultra MAGA, which he and other Democrats have started using in hopes of drawing a clear contrast with Trump's movement. It's obviously a smart plan to try to pin yourself against someone. That's also why I'm not really sure if Trump were to run, whether or not he'd win the election. Trump, that being because, like we saw with Gavin Newsom and Larry Elder, people were like not too big on Gavin Newsom, but once Larry Elder came in the race, it completely shifted and it was a blowout essentially. So because of that, I don't know what the dynamics will be if Donald Trump were to enter the race, because would Donald Trump make a bunch of people want to vote for Biden? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. It says the phrase tested well in polling reviewed by the White House, but has also had the unintended effect of firing up the Trump faithful. Merchandisers have found a hot market for Ultra MAGA t-shirts. He shares the view that we haven't landed on a winning midterm message. A third person close to the White House said the president is putting a lot of pressure on people to figure out what that is. Says no reprieve ahead. One of Biden's prescriptions for his political troubles at the start of the new year was to travel outside Washington more. As he has gotten out in the country, he's also gotten an earful from Democrats about what his administration is or isn't doing. People confront him, said a top Democratic donor who's witnessed such conversations at fundraisers. All he's hearing is, why can't you get anything done? It's no wonder about 3/4 of Americans believe the country is on the wrong track. Recent NBC News poll found only the 5th time in the last 34 years so many Americans have been dissatisfied with the nation's direction. There is no respite after the midterms. The 2024 presidential election season begins in earnest once the last races are called. No sitting president wants to be challenged for the party's nomination. Biden can't count on a free ride. We're on a losing track, Faiz Shakir, senior advisor to Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, said of the Democrats. So, basically what you can see is there's a lot of chaos going on inside of the Joe Biden administration. There is an inevitability that after the midterms, they're just waiting for the midterms to be over. You don't want, I guess, a leadership shakeup right now. But within Biden's staff leadership, there will be a huge shakeup going down. And that is ultimately what we're about to see after the midterms. Not going to happen tomorrow, but it will come after the midterms. And they're in complete chaos right now inside of the Biden administration. As I just went through all of these different crises, inflation, gas prices, all of these kinds of different things. And he just released a plan to try to get over the inflation, which, is a multi-point plan here. But the biggest thing that really caused the inflation was just the increase of demand for goods as opposed to services, and then also the supply curve contracting because of all the regulations and stuff for COVID, making it harder to meet the supply demands. So not only did demand for goods itself increase because of the coronavirus pandemic, all over services, also the supply chain contracted because of all the regulations. So just so you guys know, when the demand curve shifts right and the supply curve stays the same, the price goes up. What happens when the supply curve also moves to the left? It's going to go up even more. That's inflation. Prices are going up. So that's the main thing that ended up causing it. The stimulus did a little bit, but the economists are clear that it was worth it, because if you don't stimulate the economy through there, you're going to go into towards a really bad recession that can literally eventually end up turning into a Great Depression. So they had to do that to be able to save the economy, and that, I'm sure, it impacted inflation a little bit, but that's not the main thrust of inflation. There's also another story that I'll probably do another video on, a separate video, but it says Biden sees exodus of black staffers and some frustration among those who remain. The White House is historically diverse, but there are concerns internally about a wave of departures in the current culture. So that's a pretty interesting one. Biden seeing an exodus of black staffers, which I'll probably do a separate video on. But anyways, Biden administration in shambles, crisis after crisis. The Uvalde thing just added to it. It just seems like it's not ending for Joe Biden, and he's really pissed about this.